We're going to be learning about facts about history. Me, myself, I love some good history facts. I like anything about history, really. I like to learn about it and truly learn about it, not just listen to school and be like, yeah, school told us that, so it must be true. I do my own research. All right, today we're going to be learning about completely wrong history facts that you may still believe. Sorry, guys, the dyslexicness was about to hit me super hard right now.
History facts that are wrong.
The slaves did not build the pyramid.
This is probably one of the first things we all learned about in school when discussing ancient Egypt. Tens of thousands of slaves enduring endless hours of intense, forced physical labor while barely being fed or provided with adequate water. Drop a sack of sand, chisel something at the wrong angle, devout masochist, you're getting a whipping. Well, it's all poppycock. While there were slaves, they were mainly prisoners of war or household servants who tended to their landlords, but they weren't really part of the main labor force. Instead, laborers in ancient Egypt were conscripted using the corvée duty system, a way to pay off taxes through manual labor. According to the book The Pyramid Builders of Ancient Egypt, which discusses the pyramid builders of ancient Egypt, farmers were usually pulled from their laborious crop dusting for construction work whenever the Nile went all floody during the summer months. While the snobby rich upper class folk avoided manual labor by just paying off their tax burden, them smelly poors were tasked with construction of temples, tombs, and pyramids. Laborers who worked on the pyramids, as well as other large structures way back in the ancient times, were actually well provided for. This makes sense as having a weak...
Yep. See? That makes a lot of sense because, yeah. No, it actually does. It does.
Neglect or malnourishment, it doesn't really pay great dividends. Can't exactly move giant rocks when you're completely emaciated. Small villages have been discovered built specifically for housing laborers. These sites also contain various animal bones and plentiful bread jars showing a high-quality diet. But of course...
See, I'm telling you, bro. I'm telling you, bro. You got to do your own research. You got to look at history because they can just tell you whatever, and most people just believe it. My parents don't really know much about history. They only know what they've learned from school. They never do their own digging. I tell them some fun facts about history, some true facts, and they're like, no, that's not what I was told. Because they watch the news. You know, it's hard for me to like respect people that sit there and watch the news all day. Because you don't do your own research. All these news companies are owned by individual companies that want to push an agenda to you. And it's like, Peter, you sound like a theorist right now. No, it's been proven. It's been so proven. So the second you start to learn your own history and actually dig deep into it, people are gonna start calling you, you're stupid. Oh man, why would the school system lie to us? Well, they have certain things to push. They need to keep you all in constant terror. They need to push lies onto you so you believe what they're saying. Look at me, I just sound like one of those guys on the internet, bro.
The system wasn't perfect. Thanks to some classic upper-class corruption, sometimes things didn't always go right for these laborers, but they had the power to stand their ground. Dating all the way back to 1170 BC, written evidence has been found of an artisan's strike while constructing a tomb for then-pharaoh Ramesses III. The artisans complained about a lack of promised rations and outright refused to continue their work, dropping their chisels and their hammers to march right up to the ruling class's temples to make their demands. What do we want? Food! When do we want it? Food! After chit-chatting with the local vizier, the workers were able to secure the rations and continued their work. Now don't get me wrong, the labor that these guys endured was backbreaking, extremely strenuous, and downright exhausting, but they weren't outright enslaved or mistreated, as historians previously thought.
What is this? Okay.
We've all heard the legends about King Tut's tomb, right? If you disturb an ancient king's burial grounds, you'll be cursed, doomed to die a horrible death. Well, it's not so. You'd probably cough a bit from inhaling millennial-old mummy powder, but that's about it. Now, there has been evidence of some ancient tombs inscribed with curse-like carvings. For example, ancient warlord and Egyptian noble Ankh-Tifi wrote that, quote, any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to his coffin, may the gods not accept any goods he offers, and may his heir never inherit. Similarly, an inscription on the tomb of 10th century BC...
Bro, I'm pretty sure back in the day, they used to bury like people alive because the pharaoh died, and they would bury the servant and the wife, bro... Imagine being a wife. Oh, my husband just died. That means I gotta go. Because they believed they would take their wives and their servants with them into the afterlife to serve them, which is just not how it works. And I'm not saying I know everything, but I believe in one true God. That's what I believe in, right? and they said they would they would also bury them with treasures so they could take it into the afterlife, which makes no sense. Like even if you're a non-believer, that wouldn't make any sense either. It's like you're gonna take physical things into the spiritual realm. We don't crack. Back in the day, probably were.
Ruler Kentika Ikeki warns that any impure men who enter this tomb, there will be judgment. An end shall be made for him. I shall seize his neck like a bird, and I shall cast the fear of myself into him. Now, in a culture that was super superstitious, anyone coming across warnings like that would be like, "Oh shit! A ghost!" When King Tut's
ghost!
was discovered in 1922, no such written reprimands or warnings were ever found. In reality, the rumor of King Tut's curse revolves around one George Edward Stanhope Molyneux Herbert, 5th Earl of Carnarvon, a rich English white dude who funded the whole expedition that led to the discovery of the Sandy sarcophagus. He died a whole 4 months after the opening of the tomb, after which a journalist did what journalists do and printed a whole bunch of sensationalized fake news, attributing Lord
curse.
Carnarvon's death to an inexplicable curse. To no surprise, the media ran with it, making claims of a written curse being uncovered with the tomb, though this never happened. So how did Lord Carnarvon die? He done got bit by a mosquito. The resulting bump was accidentally slashed while he was shaving, making a pretty nasty cut that later got infected. The old chap died of blood poisoning at the age of 56. Dedicated believers have tried to attribute other deaths to the curse, but they're really grasping for straws. Of the 58 people who were present at the opening of the tomb, only 8 had died within a dozen years of the discovery, and by various means ranging from cancer to murder to natural causes. The majority of the men went to live on full, healthy lives. At least they didn't steal any spooky slabs. That might have been a different story. When you think of Spartans,
threw the babies off cliffs.
The slippery, shiny hunks of warrior man meat as portrayed on the silver screen. A society of strict and viciously trained, bloodthirsty warriors who could decimate any opposing army. But while you're thinking about oiled up, shirtless, muscular men, you might question if this portrayal...
Hey, yo, what? Ain't nobody thinking about that.
...is historically accurate. It's not. In reality, the Greek city-state of Sparta had no professional army. Although growing up with militaristic training, the purpose was not to create warriors, but perfected, hardened, and respectable citizens who could serve to defend their homeland if need be. That little element of perfection is where some rumors of Spartan eugenics come in. It is believed that ancient Spartans practiced infanticide, the act of killing deformed or undesired babies as a way to strengthen the Spartan society. However, the downfall of this myth is that there's only one historical source that alludes to this barbaric practice, and it's this guy, Roman historian Plutarch. He wrote that Spartan elders would examine newborns for imperfections or weaknesses. Good, good, bad, good. What the? Hello, Daddy. Ew. If any were ever found, they would just yeetus the fetus off the Taygetus mountainside. This ensured that only the best of the best would be able to thrive to crushing adulthood. But this bit of literature is almost certainly a bunch of baloney. While historians can't confirm with 100% certainty, they can confirm with 99.9% certainty that this just flat out never happened. Excavations around the proposed baby hucking sites have failed to present any supporting evidence. There have been a few adult remains discovered, but no teeny tiny toddler tibias were ever among them. If you needed more convincing, Plutarch's writings date some 600 years after the height of Spartan civilization.
Bro, I could never be thrown off a cliff. I couldn't, bro. That just sounds like the worst way, bro. But I was watching a Zach Films video on Instagram, of course. That's where he is, and he's awesome, and TikTok, whatever. I was watching, and he said, before you hit the ground, your body goes into this like weird state. And it's just, you won't even feel yourself hitting the ground. How do they know that? I do not know. I do not know how they know that.
So it might have just been some silly Spartan slander. That would be like if future archaeologists in the year 4000 unearthed fan fiction from today about how medieval Europeans would just shit their britches to ward off witches. Sure, it's questionable, but you could kind of see that happening, right?
Gladiators fought to the
You
death.
may think death was not the goal of gladiator battles in the Roman Colosseum.
Yeah, it was for entertainment. It was generally just for entertainment.
If it was, Rome would have run out of them real quick. Now keep in mind that the Colosseum was active for over 400 years, hosting a plethora of different events ranging from gladiator battles to public criminal executions to full-fledged naval battle reenactments with the entire Colosseum being flooded. Pretty wild, right?
No
Gladiator
way.
battles were basically the equivalent of today's UFC or boxing matches, just with swords and spears instead of fists. These fights were spectacles of sport, and the gladiators were the athletes. You had some super famous gladiators, rookie gladiators, and everything in between. While some gladiators were slaves, criminals, or prisoners of war fighting for their chance of freedom, most of the big old brutes fought for fame and fortune, or just the high-octane dopamine rush of being able to legally stab someone in the kidney and getting praised for it. Roman citizens were hyped to watch two dudes duke it out in a sweaty, sandy, sassy struggle of strength, but
What's up, brother? Cooking up. Hold on. You see that boy?
citizens were hyped to watch
What are they all cooking up, bro? Look at this.
two dudes
Brother's got grub.
duke it out in a
Eating
sweaty, sandy,
good,
sassy
bro. Eating
struggle of
good.
strength. But things were a lot more exciting than just the vanilla missionary position 9-to-5 white picket fence 1.5 children ass sword and shield type gladiators. Nope. Actually, there were about 30 different types of gladiators ready to clang and bang away at each other. You had your dual.
You know, I knew that. Actually. I knew that. I watched that. Wait, I'm in the way, guys. My bad. I'm in the way. But I knew that. I knew that one fun fact about that. You know. Yeah, your boy knows something. Just a smidge of some, you know. I knew there was a lot of gladiators. They weren't all the same.
Building Demochirus, the trident-chucking Retiarius, the silly-looking Caesar, and the alls-out, balls-out Cestus, among other DLC characters. So imagine that you're living your boring Roman life, sitting in your boring Roman house, scratching your boring Roman balls when you suddenly catch wind of the gladiator battle of the century. Two andabate pitted against each other. You'd lose your shit. Why would you lose your shit? Because andabate were condemned criminals fighting each other completely blind. Yeah, as a form of punishment, two criminals equipped with nothing more than a sealed helmet and a rusty sword were dumped out into the arena and forced to square off. It's like watching two blindfolded kids trying to whack at a piñata, except they're both potential piñatas. Now, while formal gladiator duels were not to the death, of course some still died, but it was more common to die by bleeding out after the match had been called by the referee. Oh yeah, they had referees. These were often retired gladiators tasked with making sure that the rules of battle were being followed and stopping fights before final blows were dealt. You see, gladiators were expensive investments, so their managers wanted them alive for as long as possible, lest they start all over leveling up another rookie from scratch.
Right.
So with all that being said, professional gladiator battles were not performed for the sake of death, just for the thrill of the fight, and the potential of death. Ancient myths are tough for modern historians to interpret, as historical writers across time have their own biases. Depending on how they felt about a certain historical figure, they could cement their legacy in history as a smart fella or a fart smella. The prevailing myth that Roman Emperor Nero diddled his fiddle as Rome burned to the ground is one that should go up in smoke. It's commonly believed that Nero, having descended into madness over the course of his reign, started the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD.
Bro, he has some cold edits on like TikTok and Instagram. It's like, before I could conquer Rome, I had to conquer my mind. Something like that. They're super tough videos. Maybe if I find one, I'll show y'all.
A disastrous and destructive inferno that destroyed nearly 3/4 of the Roman capital. Accusations claim that Nero didn't really like the look of Rome and wanted to rebuild it in his own vision with a lavish and gaudy golden palace, so a conveniently timed fire would have been a great opportunity to do so. The fire is suspected to have started in a shopping district stockpiled with flammable goods. Once the fire started, it was nearly impossible to contain. Rome was a dense city, streets were narrow, housing structures were wooden, and the wind was a-blowin'. This set of conditions provided the perfect environment for the big ol' fire to really roar. The blaze lasted for 9 whole days, decimating 10 of Rome's 14 districts. But was Emperor Nero to blame? Not at all. According to Tacitus, one of the most influential Roman historians at the time, Nero was not near Rome when the fire started. He was actually several miles away in the coastal town of Antium, but he rushed back home to Rome once he caught wind of the disaster. When he did get back, Nero actually funded relief efforts and opened up private gardens and other structures for shelter to those affected. Despite these efforts, Nero still came under scrutiny from the nobles who hated him, claiming that he should have responded sooner and provided more assistance. Freaking Nero, dude.
Dude, that goes to show you can't please everybody. You can't please everybody.
I bet my scorched ass cheeks he started that fire himself. Yeah, you're right, he probably did. Guys, he was literally miles away in another city. What did you do? And that's how rumors start. In actual fact, there is no historical evidence that Nero started the fire, and especially no evidence that he played the fiddle when Rome burned. Mostly because the fiddle wouldn't be invented for another 900 years. It's probable that the claim is part of Christian propaganda, as Nero famously blamed them for the fire, leading to their persecution. So who really got the last laugh? It was Nero. He burned a lot of Christians.
It's bad, honestly.
It's
Let me
possible that your
bro, I
middle school
can't find
history
the video,
textbooks
bro.
may have toyed with the idea that ancient Aztecs, or even the greater Mexican people as a whole, saw the invading Spanish conquistadors as godlike figures. More specifically, history has suggested that the Aztec ruler Moctezuma, or Montezuma, however you want to pronounce it, believed that the arrival of the Spanish coincided with the prophesied return of Quetzalcoatl, the Mesoamerican feathered serpent god of creation. But we now know that it's all, as the Spanish say, a bunch of caca. It's certainly true that the native Mexican people were stunned and confused by the appearance of the foreign invaders with their fancy horses, gunpowder, and white skin, but there's no evidence explicitly stating that they were thought of as gods. Letters written by Hernan
Julius Caesar edit.
Cortez himself about his conquests.
Bro, this is the have y'all seen this movie called like The Road to El Dorado? Boom! But I'm on point today with everything. It's a great movie.
Never mentioned being mistaken for or being interpreted as a god
Actually, can
in
I?
any way, shape.
Actually, let me see if I can spell that. Road. Did I spell that wrong? Road to El D. This movie. Oh my word. Whoa. Yeah, these guys. They went to the Aztecs. Dead butt, for real. It's peak movie.
Or form. And this is further supported by the writings of Spanish conquistador Bernal Diaz del Castillo, who chronicled Cortez's conquests in real time. One passage highlights a conversation between Cortez and Moctezuma in the Aztec capital Tenochtitlan. Conversation basically had Moctezuma being like, yeah, people around here think I'm a god, that I'm all about gold and silver and precious stones, but look, you see that? Flesh and
Listen
blood,
to
my
this.
dude.
Listen to this. Julius Caesar has some tough.
I came, I saw, I conquered.
That's hard, right? Anyone?
I came to Rome when it was a city of stone, and left it a city of marble.
That's hard. Sorry.
Both the
I just had to
same.
show you what I was
I know
thinking
that you're
of.
just a bunch of foreigners and not some otherworldly divine beings. Just be silly. To which Cortez replied, so where did this idea come from? Well, it actually started to surface decades after the Aztecs were conquered. Publications of Spanish conquests alluded to the idea that Cortez and his men tried to pass their weapons off as magic and their horses off as intelligent, aggressive beasts. So it was mainly a sensationalized retelling of events, portraying the Mexican people as more feeble-minded, all while embellishing the Spanish image. As it turns out, the Aztec weren't bamboozled by some distrustful deity. The Spanish completely steamrolled the Aztec with the help of guns, alliances to Aztec rivals, and every European explorer's iconic weapon, disease.
Yeah.
It was less, oh my god, and more,
Oh my God!
The Great Depression was truly a financial disaster, not only for the US, but for the entire globe. Most of you out there might recall learning that the stock market crash of 1929 caused the Great Depression, but in reality, it was just the signal that shit had hit the financial fan. Nothing more than a devastating effect from a much more threatening underlying cause. If you're unaware, the world economy is a constant struggle for balance of supply and demand,
Right.
with price being the end result. Lots of demand and no supply, prices go up. Lots of supply but no buyers, prices go down. Sure, that's a bit oversimplified, but you get the idea. The Great Depression was a catastrophic chain of events stemming from US overproduction of goods. You see, in the early 1920s, the world had entered a time of peace at the end of World War I. This led to an industrial boom. Not for war machines, but for consumer goods. Mass production was going wild, and factories were farting out new products like crazy. To sell these products, companies began aggressive advertising campaigns. The news, radio, magazines, and everything just screamed in your face to buy the latest and greatest doohickey. And the people did. But how could customers afford all of this lavish spending?
Loans.
Yep.
Ah! I just got my credit card, bro. My mom's telling me about, like, yo, you gotta be careful with that. I'm like, yeah, you're right, mom. Mom's knowledgeable sometimes. A lot of finance stuff. That was her job for, like, the longest time.
Establishment of consumer credit. Cars, appliances, clothes, homes, all purchased on credit. But the United States was not the only beneficiary of a peacetime economy. European and Asian markets began producing their own goods, selling these products to the US for cheaper prices, which caught the eyes of consumers looking to save a few pennies here and there.
Right.
The big American companies, seeing potential profits leaving their grubby hands, were pissed and lobbied Congress to protect their interests. In order to do so, the Fordney-McCumber Tariff of 1922 was passed.
It all starts
This
because of
raised
greed.
American tariffs across the board, increasing the consumer cost of foreign goods as to thin out the competition and force Americans to buy American products. Europe and Asia promptly responded in kind, and soon a tariff war commenced. All this sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? Now, in order to keep a super long story super short, here's what happened next. Demand shrank as American companies and farms overproduced their goods. Too much stuff and no one to buy it means less sales. Less sales means less profit for these companies, and with less company profit, that means they're gonna start handing out some pink slips. With lots of people laid off, lots of people have less money to spend, so companies lose even more money. And if they lose enough of it, they go bankrupt. Now, when companies went bankrupt, at least back in the 1920s, the banks that supported them failed. And when the banks failed, people's money straight up vanished, thanks to the lack of FDIC insurance. Everyone loses their shit and rushes to withdraw money from whatever banks are still standing, but there's not enough physical cash to meet that demand. Now, all of a sudden, no one has money. So what happened to it all? The banks lent it out to all the rich people, placing speculative bets on the stock market. Now, when there's a lot of market speculation, stock market
Bro, it's just all because of greed, bruh. It's just all basically started because of greed.
prices get unreasonably high. Unreasonably high prices aren't very sexy, so no one else wants to buy them. Instead, they sell to take profits. But when these profits are taken, that stock price drops. When stock prices drop, any remaining shareholders lose potential profit, which is no bueno. So they panic sell whatever shares they have. And when there's enough seller momentum across the board, the entire stock market crashes. So banks have failed, blue-collar workers have lost their life savings overnight, millionaires have lost their fortunes, factories have folded, and farmers have hung up their tools. Not only did this cripple the United States, but the entirety of global trade. The United States could not meet critical export demands, and foreign economies selling raw materials such as sugar, rubber, and lumber lost their biggest customer, and thus most of their money, impacting their economies. The Great Depression was without doubt one of the worst economic disasters of
Oh yeah, I do remember learning about this in history class too, bruh. It was just like, wow. Greed. You know, greed.
the modern age. The American economy struggled until the United States
That's the
entered
greed
World
they talk
War
about
II
in the Bible.
1941, where demand for production and labor picked right back up. To put it simply, the 1929 stock market crash did not cause the Great Depression. It was the writing on the wall that the system was breaking. Afterward, the banking system was overhauled and the stock market heavily regulated to prevent history from repeating itself. And we'll see how that goes. Well, that's the end of this video. Did you learn something new? I hope so.
What the? Yo, what? Yo, I don't even want to know. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Remember, subscribe, leave a comment. I love you out of life, man. What is this, bruh? What? I don't even want to know. I'm out. All right, have a good rest of your day. What?